answer a lot of questions that the parents have about the humanities, especially for Sec 1 History and Sec 1 Geography. What exactly does it entail? Okay, what are some of the expectations? And I think a lot of you also have this question, okay, if my child has a problem, how can I actually help my child? Yeah, okay. Okay, sorry, I'm Miss Ong Li Hua. I actually teach Sec 1 History. I'll be taking you through Sec 1 History component. Later on, Ms. Tan Shu Wei, here in front, yeah, she'll be sharing with you more on Sec 1 Geography. All right, this is basically what I'll be sharing. Why is the study of history important, and how is it different? Because I think many of you there have done history when you were in school, and I have done history, and I think history then and now is really very different, okay? And what are the demands? In what ways you can help? Right? Okay. I think maybe there are still some skeptics out there. Why do we need to take history? So maybe just allow me to run through with you some of the important things why history is very crucial, all right, to your child's education. I think the first thing is about everyday skills that your child will be able to pick up. I mean, in the digital world today, you know, often the teenagers are basically exposed to different types of information, all right? So even just picking up newspapers every morning, how do you assess the sources of information, all right? Do you read or do you believe in what you see all the time? And history is really a great vehicle, all right, to actually allow your girls to kind of assess sources, question its reliability, utility, etc. Of course, history also allows your child to understand the present, okay, and hopefully be a more informed citizen. Often, to understand local events or local phenomenon, regional or even global situation, historical knowledge is very important because you cannot understand why this is so without kind of having a background knowledge of how things have evolved. And with that, will come a fairer assessment of certain events, situations, and then be able to make informed decisions. History is essentially the story of mankind, and then it's not just a singular story. Often the pupils are exposed to different stories, experiences of the power, the powerless, the men, the women, the advantaged and the disadvantaged. And I think through all these multiple perspectives, it allows the students to understand the complexity of the human condition, that often things are not so black and white, and they'll be more comfortable with the ambiguity, and this is what they're going to face in life as well. Yeah. Okay, lastly, understand how knowledge is constructed, because I think later I'll be sharing with you source-based study, and this is how they understand how often information is just information. How do you take pieces of information and sources and construct them into a body of knowledge? All right, the skills needed, the skills to pick and select and to build an argument, all right, or thesis in that sense. All right, that's in the past, okay, how has history evolved? I think when I was a student, actually this was the advice that people gave me, all right? Or I think my mom said, you know, history, if you have an elephant memory, I'm sure you can do well. You just memorize, it's just facts, you know, just do past year questions, memorize answers, and then you will probably ace the subject. I think it was largely quite true in the past, I must say, right? But I think your daughters live in a very exciting age, all right? Much more challenging. Actually, history is never just about facts. In the past, it was just the way that it was taught and the way that it was assessed, all right? Now, the focus often, and a lot of it, is on the application. Critical thinking, how do they engage with sources they have never seen before? How do they make connections between what they have learned with the sources or with things around them, okay? And ability to memorize. Okay, if you can mark and you can study, you can memorize word one to the last word of the entire chapter, it's no guarantee that you're going to do well in the subject, all right? So I think if you are still thinking, you know, you're giving your girls advice that you have to study, you have to remember, you have to memorize, then maybe you may want to consider stop giving her this piece of advice, because it may not be very relevant, yeah? Okay, for history, all right, what does it entail, all right? This may not be all covered in Sec 1 history, all right? But at least for the span of 2 years, lower Sec history, in terms of content and knowledge, we deal a lot with concepts, things like, for example, even the concept of founder, right? What do you mean by a founder of a country, right? Or even for the upper Sec revolution, you know, themes, ideas, events, skills, the ability to empathize, not to sympathize, but to understand why people make certain decisions in a certain context, given certain circumstances. Perspectives, very important. The idea of change and continuity. Significance. How do you actually decide which is the most significant event, for example, given a certain context? How do you judge, okay, that this person has made bigger contribution in certain areas? Cause and effect. And things like identifying, inferring, comparing, explaining, and maybe Sec 2 and beyond, evaluating. Okay, right. So if you're concerned about, okay, what kind of questions will my girl, will be expected to kind of answer, all right? So we're talking about maybe more exam-style questions. So recall and short answer questions are something that are used to in primary school. It's like, okay, list a point, list an advantage, so 1 mark, 2 marks. The one that might be slightly different, which your daughters may find find them to be new, would be the structured questions and the source-based questions. Yeah. Right? Okay. Just to give you an idea of what the girls are covering in Sec 1, basically the focus is on historiography and Singapore history, which means that for the past 3 months, what your daughters have been doing is really this particular unit. What is history? Different types of sources. How do historians work with sources? What kind of questions, what kind of problems do they face? All right, so we haven't really gone into the content-heavy topics yet. So this is more building of skills and application. All right, yeah. Okay. Graded components, CA, block tests, graded assignments. And I think the Sec 1 students are gradually getting used to the fact that their CA does not just consist of tests, because some of them told me that in primary school, when it comes to their CA grade, it's just tests and then tests. But now, sometimes their daily work, etc., is also going to go into their graded assignments. So some of them find that bit a bit challenging to adjust at this point in time. Yeah. So for graded assignments for Sec 1 history, it could be research-based, all right? It could be source-based, structured essay, all right? It could be group work, etc., all right? So it's a whole spectrum. Block tests and the coming block tests in maybe about 4 or 5 weeks' time. That's the format. An email has been sent. The teachers have already given the format to the students and the topics to be tested. All right, SA, end of year exam. Yeah. Of course, we have another component known as SIA, and if you're familiar with what your girls are doing, it's actually future problem solving. Okay, end of year exam. Okay. Again, short answer questions, source-based and structured questions. Yeah. All right. I think I would spend a bit more time talking about source-based study, because a lot of you may not have gone through it, and this is the one that the students find really quite new as well, all right? Source-based study basically allows the student to work like a historian, okay? Meaning they're given different types of sources, primary, secondary sources. It could be a photograph, it could be an artifact, it could be a diary entry, all right? And they're expected to engage with the source, okay, and respond to the source. I mean, what exactly is the question asking for, right? So it's really an inquiry process where the student is put in a position like a detective, like supposed to find out certain things, okay? So it is not something that they can study from the textbook. They probably will know that, oh, different types of sources will have certain limitations and certain strengths. But the source given to them will be something that they have not really seen before in that sense. but they're supposed to apply the skill of what they learn in class. Okay, so for Sec 1 students, we'll be doing the skill of inference and comparison. And when they go to Sec 2, assessing the utility, which is the usefulness of a source in helping you understand a certain issue, and assessing reliability. But of course, we are not saying that in Sec 1, they don't talk about reliability of the source as well. Okay? The thing is that in Sec 2, what we mean is that they are assessed formally on that skill. But in Sec 1, when we are looking and asking questions about a source, inevitably we'll talk about the usefulness and the reliability. All right? So all these skills come together. But when we talk about Sec 1, Sec 2, we're talking about formal assessment and the summative assessment. Yep. Okay. All right, so this would be basically what it means when we talk about source-based case study. What do we expect the pupils to be able to do? The ability to read and understand the content in the source. And of course, to respond, meaning you're responding to a certain question, you're responding to a certain issue, right? So to cite evidence to support and to explain that understanding. And because sources do not just appear in a vacuum, all right? They are real authentic sources, and they were created in a certain context, right? So the pupils will have to be able to kind of look at the source and situate it in the historical context. So they also need to know the historical knowledge. So source-based is also not like I don't have to know anything about what happened, let's say Japanese occupation. I just have to look at a source. You need the historical knowledge as well and to make the connections. Of course, the ability to evaluate the reliability and utility, all right, how useful it is in helping you when you're investigating a certain issue, all right? Okay, so this would be an example of a source-based question. And for some of you who are here, this will look familiar, all right? Because I think the students, we just did this, okay? So a source like this, okay, a plate, a ceramic plate, and then the question will go, what can you infer about the socioeconomic features, or what can you tell about the Indus Valley people, okay, the Indus Valley culture? Okay, so what is slightly different, right, is that it's the mark scheme that we use, all right? We use this thing called levels of response, LOMS. So we do not do point marking, meaning we do not go 1 inference, 1 mark, 2 inferences, 2 marks, 3 inferences, 3 marks, etc., or 1 point to elaborate another mark. But what we do is to read the answer and place it under a certain level of response, okay? Meaning, if the student basically describes, okay, what she sees in this particular picture, without making any inference, okay, maybe any conclusion that's based on evidence and then reasoning, then she would be placed in this level, okay? So we look at the entire argument, all right? And the second L2 would mean an inference is given, however, the students failed to give the right evidence or failed to basically explain it well, meaning I don't understand, okay, your inference is there, but why? How did you come about this, all right? The girl did not really explain, it's L2. And L3 is where all the students should aim, and that is inference supported with evidence explained. Okay? So this is how it looks like, okay? I think it's important for you to understand this because when they get back their scripts, right, okay, what the teachers will do, well, we will have this, okay, L1, L2, L3, okay? All right, so you need to understand that, oh, what does this mean? This is a new way, or rather not new way, but this is how marking goes for level of response, okay? And your girl should know, because if you ask her and you say L1, I do not know, that means she's probably not listening in class, because we can't do source-based. The teachers cannot teach source-based without going through LOMS, okay? Yeah. Okay, so what we are assessing for LOMS is the level of interpretation, the level of thinking. Is it at a descriptive level? Or is the student able to make an inference? Or is the student able to make an inference supported with explanation? At which level of thinking and response is that particular answer? So in a way, you can say there is no right or wrong answer, okay? often, okay, students don't score 0 for source-based, all right? Even at the most minimal level of response, they get at least a mark. So it is more holistic, all right, rather than compared to point marking, all right? Because source-based, in order for us to assess the thinking skills, right, point marking doesn't really work in this sense, okay? The 1, 2, 3, okay, the fourth point is very important. The levels are not fixed, okay? Depends on the source and the question. What we mean by this is not that, oh, you mean one session inference not supported becomes a level 3? We don't mean that. What we mean is that, okay, normally the levels of thinking would be more or less consistent, correct? The ability to make an explanation based on the inference will always be placed higher. But sometimes you can see 4 levels, sometimes 3 levels, okay? All right? It's not fixed because it depends on the question and it depends on the source. So students are not encouraged. In fact, they're not supposed to memorize the norms, okay? Or they will ask questions like, Miss All, level 3 inference, the range is 4 to 5 marks. Does it mean 1 inference is 4, 2 inferences are 5? So does it mean every time I see an inference question, I have to give 2 inferences in a very fixed way, right? But it doesn't go like that because sometimes the source only allows for 1 inference. So then, let's say there's a range, we go for quality of explanation. But sometimes the source is so rich that it does have 2 inferences that you can come up with, and then it would be a situation where the top mark, 5 marks, would be given to the second inferences. So it depends on the source and what the question is asking. And they cannot memorize, because I do still have upper sec students who think 2 inferences. And then the first inference is good, and the second inference is nonsensical. And then they tell you that because I thought we die have to give 2 inferences. That means they're not really thinking, and they're just putting down an answer because they thought that that's the format and they have to adhere to that. So I think we are trying to encourage students to think and really engage with the source rather than to memorize something, yeah? Okay. Sorry, important thing, not cumulative. You don't have to score L1 to go to L2 and L2 to go to L3. Sometimes the student straight away will just hit L3 and that's the mark the student gets. All right. Included these slides, maybe for some of the parents, you have not really encountered this with your girls yet because they have not really gone in to do source-based. We have only just introduced the skill of inference, all right? So, but we're sharing with you because just in case that some of these problems surface later, because this is based on our experience, like often Sec 1 students, you know, when they do source-based, or even students when they do source-based, they tend to have certain challenges. Okay, for example, one area of problem is the inability to understand the source or totally wrong interpretation, like totally off, okay? Here, we have to look at, for example, the reasons, and possible causes could be weak language skills because humanities, often it is really tied to the mastery of the English language, right? Like when you read a source, can you even comprehend the source or not? Or cognitive skills. All right, which means that you have to work on maybe more practices in looking at the source, how do we infer, etc. And then the next part is actually can't put source in its historical context, okay, and or not able to check accuracy, etc. Probably means that maybe this one possible cause would be the weak grasp of content or conceptual knowledge, because they look at the source, but they don't exactly know, okay, for example, this source was a speech by a certain person, but their content knowledge about that topic is so weak, all right, that they don't really understand what's the background of this person when it's already covered in class, etc. So sometimes it's because of their weak content knowledge that affects the source base, even though source base is, in a sense, you know, more about thinking and responding to individual source, all right? Okay, this third one is a common problem with the Sec 1 students. I would say not incoherent, but undeveloped responses, not explained, okay? Sometimes they just have the main point, all right, and very brief, okay, and you ask them, why is this so? You're supposed to develop your answer. And I think they are still in the primary school mode whereby, it's just brief answers and they're not familiar or they're not used to developing an argument, all right, topic, sentence, evidence. Like that I'll show you in the structured question, all right. They're not familiar with the approach. Or sometimes you tell them, but they keep going back to the primary school way, and that's when the parents can come in to remind that you need to develop your answers, you need to write a bit more. Because when you talk to the girls sometimes, when I go through the answers, they can tell you, oh, yeah, explanation, I have to give this. Then the question is, but why didn't you put it on your paper? Then they will go, oh, but I didn't think that we have to do it. So they're still not familiar with the approach, because in primary school, maybe P4, P5, P6, they're so used to one way of answering questions, yeah? Unable to effectively communicate, explain, or no links to the question. This one, there will be answers where the students can give you a lot of information, and the things that you want are all there, but it's just missing that link. So it could be, again, their weak essay writing or paragraph writing skills. Okay. All right. Okay. This is the other type of questions, all right? Structured questions, structured essay, all right? And normally for end of year exam, okay, we do have two types. That means actually one question broken into two parts. 1A will be something like, explain how primary sources are useful in a historical investigation. And the B type question will be the slightly more challenging kind of question, like learning from the past is why history should be studied. How far do you agree with this statement, or do you agree with this statement? Explain your answer. Okay. So what is expected? What are the demands, right? Actually, okay, 1A is easier, all right, because it's point marking, all right? So if you see explain 2 reasons, 4 marks, it means main point is 1 mark, example and brief elaboration is 1 mark. So if you have 4 marks, it means 2 main points, right? So 2 separate paragraphs with elaboration and explanation. It will look something like that for the first question, 1A. One strength is that primary sources are direct from the time and place of investigation, or if the student says first-hand source, so maybe 1 mark, then they have to elaborate and explain a bit, right? So why is that a strength? This means that sources are not interpreted by anyone else, which may sometimes result in biased sources, and the person doing research can make his own interpretation. Of course, I mean, the girls will explain in their own way using their own language, right? So we will look at, has she actually explained or elaborated on her main point? So this is like 2 marks. Then B question is back to the good old LOMs, the levels of response. So it means it's not point marking. So it's not about listing me as, like 5 main points about why history should be studied, okay? And giving me very brief elaboration of each of the 5 points. But it's about actually going in depth and explaining one point well, okay? If you look at the LOMs, again, the answers are placed according to levels. Level 1 is, didn't even describe, just general statement, like, I love history, history should be studied, for example. Describe given or other factor. Quite a few Sec 1 students, when they first do this, this is where they are at. So they tend to describe very generally, very brief answers. And at L3 is what at least they should be aiming for, and L4, they're able to explain, all right? They have reached the level of explanation. But 3 and 4 is actually distinguished, all right, by the fact that L3 is where the student is able to only explain one perspective, whereas L4 would be 2 perspectives. Like learning from the past is not the only reason. There will be other reasons, and the student will be expected to cite another reason and develop it. Okay, so they may only have to come out, for example, 1 given and 1 other factor explained to get 5. All right? Yeah. So just to show you an example. Okay, your girls will find this very unfamiliar because we have not done this yet. All right? It will only be done next term. Okay? But this is just because we're doing this now, so we just to share with you what are some of the things you may need to take note of the rest of the year. So identifying a factor, explaining a factor. So you can see that for the explanation of factor, right, you need to give examples. If you look at identify a factor, you realize that this girl is not really saying much, okay? He's like, I agree that learning from the past is one of the reasons. History is about what happened, about leaders, events, many things happen, and we all can learn. But I don't exactly know how, all right, how we can learn. So you look at the other one, and one way is always to give specific evidence, all right, examples, okay? And after giving the examples, okay, then you make a link back to the issue. And because this question is very general, all right, like studying of history, okay, and they can use any kind of contextual knowledge, whatever they know about lessons learned as well, okay, to support their main argument. But of course, when we go back to the content, let's say when we're doing Singapore history, when there's actually a whole body of knowledge, right, so they have to be accurate when they are citing the evidence, you know, precise in the kind of information they give as well. Yeah. Right, so you will see this. I think later job, they will also adopt something like that, okay? Meaning we always give them scaffold. We don't say, go girls, write an essay, you know, do the first paragraph. We will always teach them, okay, fine, how do you organize your answer? Because many of them actually, content-wise, they know because they will study, all right? But how do you organize your answer? How do you, you know, do an argument? So point, evidence, elaboration, and for history, it's extremely important that you have to make the link back to the question, to the issue in the question. Yeah. Sometimes missing the link, okay, means an explanation becomes a description. Yeah. Okay, structured essay, I think similar issue with a source base in the sense that they are still in their, you know, giving very brief answers, identifying but not explaining. But I think there is a difference because sometimes when you look at, let's say, next time, okay, in the future, you look at your daughter's scripts and the teacher put down no specific evidence, all right, okay? It means that maybe, especially during test and time condition, right, the girl might be weak in content knowledge, meaning she didn't really study, so she couldn't give the examples and the evidence, all right? Because we also have this experience that every time parents ask students, they will go, I don't know why I did so badly. I studied, but I just do not know why I did so badly. So I think you can go back and look at the scripts and some of the comments that the teachers actually write, okay? And then the next one, okay, but there are some students with a lot of content, all right? We have a lot of content. So when you look at the script, oh, you know, you did study. I can see that you studied. You put in the time and effort. But why are you still in L2? And that's when it's really the essay skills, right? Do they understand what is making a link? So rather than to ask them, go study harder, all right, which they have already been doing, it's more, I think, constructive to work on this area. Okay, because sometimes the teachers give comment, and teachers go through in class. Some students, they get it and they will work on it, right? But some actually with the feedback, they are still sitting on it. And therefore with the parents coming in and understanding, for example, what is written in the script or even talking to the teachers, we can work together to help the students who have problems in these areas. Okay, so what are some of the advice we can give your daughters, all right? I think for history, I don't know, I think most teachers will agree that for humanities, especially for secondary level and beyond, doing notes and making notes is very, very important, all right? The materials that are given out to them, the textbook. And for Sec 1 history, I must say that we don't use the textbook. Like, okay, girls, take out the textbook, you know, page 1 to page 5, okay? So the textbook is, you are expected to read the relevant chapters in your own time. The class time is spent on activities, discussion that are related to what is in the textbook, of course, okay? But we are not going to basically go through page 1 to page 5. So it is a given that the students will be expected to read the textbook, okay? Yeah. And then, again, something quite different from primary school also, because they'll be given PowerPoint slides, worksheets, okay, and discussions that are actually carrying the main points of analysis often, okay? And then, of course, textbook. But what happens, I think, for many of the Sec 1 students, at least for some that I observe in my classes, they are so used to all the information coming from one source, all right? So they don't understand the importance of drawing the points of discussion in class, you know, looking at the PowerPoint slides and making connections and doing up a set of notes. Because during revision, it's extremely, I think, I think for the girls, very challenging to have slides, discussion notes, textbook, and then readings, and you don't collate, you know. And then when sometimes they don't have enough time to study, they panic, all right? And collation and making sense of what is being done in class also helps them kind of discover which part they don't understand, which part needs more reinforcement, etc. Okay, note making, you can advise them, you can base on key points, all right, if they are, or mind maps, etc., whatever way that your girl finds most suitable for her. Big questions. As you can see, you know, for the history syllabus, we go by big questions. What are primary and secondary sources, correct? What are the various types? What are the usefulness? How can it be useful? What are the limitations? So they can make their notes, because textbook there we have some points. PowerPoint slides some additional points. Then points of discussion in class whereby the teacher raised other important, pertinent understanding. So they have to put all these things together. Of course, it would be great. I mean, parents also say, why don't you just do everything for the girl, collate everything, and then give them, and then they can memorize from there, right? That is sometimes even the request from the students themselves, you know. Oh, you mean I have to go PowerPoint, I have to do my own notes? But it's really to also prepare them, you know, because when they go to Sec 3 and they go to JC, and especially for the study of humanities, okay, that they have to kind of construct their own understanding, all right, and not teachers prepare everything for them and they just memorize, okay? Yeah. And, okay, the last point is, when they make notes, do they have an example to support the main point? So let's say they make notes for why history should be studied. So they can, to help us understand, or to let so that history will not repeat itself. So do you have examples? So sometimes they make notes, very brief, 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines, and then 4 lines, but the notes are not very useful, okay? So they must know that every time I make something a main point, do I have examples or evidence? So I put that there. So when I study, when I see the question, I can apply. Okay, if it's an issue with the skills, for example, I think practice. Okay, but beyond saying practice, okay, I think there are certain things that you can remind your daughters. For example, like what I've said, every time we do source-based, every time we do structured essay, we always will try to give them some form of scaffold, all right? Scaffold is because they are very young and they don't really know how to basically construct their answers, so that can be a first step. So they have to understand how answers are scaffolded. All right, so this is, sometimes they can do a question without looking at the scaffold, and they will just write, okay? So that's one way you can remind your girl. Or sample suggested answers for assignments and practices. Okay, we do sometimes share with the girls. Okay, we do go through, and we go through answers, of course we got to show them, right? What are the good answers, what are the answers that are correct, okay? And often, pupils always ask, well, can I have a full set? Can I have everything? Okay, it depends. Sometimes, I think most of the time, we don't give the full set as it is, all right? Because again, we are afraid that they will end up memorizing everything, especially for source-based. Because I always tell them, the same source is never going to come out. The same question is not going to come out. But what you need to know is the mistakes that you have made. So this goes to the second point, which is active learning, okay? Reflecting and understanding the weaknesses in their own answers. Because a few of us teachers actually noticed for the Sec 1 students, actually, even for worksheets, okay, what happened is that we will ask them to try, right? Then after that, when the class comes together and we have a discussion, and then you have, those are the correct answers. We do have some girls kind of blancoing everything that they have written and putting in the perfect answer in that sense. So when you look at their worksheet, it's like, all the model answers. So I think I've told the classes that, that's not the way to learn. In fact, you want to actually have what is it that you initially come up with, and what exactly was the correct answer. And then you can compare and learn in that sense. And if you copy down points, all right, like answers, it shouldn't be you shouldn't be copying word for word, like the entire paragraph, okay? It should be, I make an inference, I don't have the link, so I'm lacking in the link. I copy the link and I put it down. Then they can actually listen to the teachers explain and not be so concerned about copying answer schemes, where they don't even look at their own answers, and all they have is just an answer scheme. just, if you look at your child's, for example, tests or exam papers later on, and you see that she's just so preoccupied with having a perfect answer, and we ask her, do you know what you have gone wrong? I mean, she should be able to tell you, oh, I didn't make that link. Or if the answer is just, I'm missing the link, so I only copied the link. Or I've missed out the main points totally, so I copied the main points, and how do I actually explain this? And it's actually taking down essential words and phrases, and not every single word in the whole sentence. Yeah, I think that's something that they are still learning. And of course, consulting the teacher. All right, really, really, you know, you still have great difficulty and all that. I think the best person to go to is always the teacher. Yeah. Time management, okay, I think I'll go to expectations and how much is enough, okay? Because I think the recent history assignment 1, history around us, right? I think some students didn't do very well because I think when they're writing, they don't exactly know what is expected. Okay, so same thing for the exams and all that. How much is enough? Okay, so for example, the history assignment 1, okay, the assess of 3 components, but some students actually only focus on 1 component, 2 components. They're not very aware about how marks are given. So when they put effort to do a piece, I say, excellent for this, but I can't give you marks for this because that's not what we are assessing. Same for the exam and test. Be familiar with how marks are awarded and don't over-focus on like 1 point, all right? Okay, you have given me 1 whole page on 1 main factor, but that's the max I can give you is 4 marks. When you could have gone to the other side, explain another factor, it could be maybe 5 or 6. So sometimes it's not that they do not know, but you know, just to draw the attention to expectations, how marks are awarded, okay, so that they can finish the paper within certain comfortable, you know, like some leeway for them to do checking, okay, and yet be able to meet the demands. Yeah, and time trial practices, we normally would do it like before exam, okay, yeah. Okay, this is the last bit. History is half of Combined Humanities, so 50% of the weighting of Combined Humanities, the other 50% is actually geography. So lesson time, 60 to 90 minutes, sometimes once a week, sometimes twice a week. Okay, this term, actually, we are quite lucky. History, we have twice, but come next semester, we are going to swap. So it's going back to 60 to 90 minutes. So because parents sometimes say, oh, why don't you give her more practices, more practices, more practices? But there is that constraint in terms of time, all right, in class as well, which means that every single assignment or piece of work that we give to the girl is very important. All right, because there is no more like another 4th piece, 5th piece. So if they take every piece of work given to them seriously and really put in the effort to do it and to learn from it, right? And if they still have problems, I think then, you know, we can look into it further. You know, can talk to the subject teacher, you know, what's happening here, etc. So always you can email the teacher, all right, or just give the teacher a phone call. Because sometimes we do not know, you know, the child comes to us and like, you know, say, oh, but, you know, I do not know, or the parent, oh, my mom says this, but we are not really sure where is it coming from. So it's good for us if you want to just give us a call, all right, so that we know how we can better help the girl if she's having problems with the subject of history. Okay? Yeah, all right. We will have a Q&A at the end after Ms. Tan finishes her segment on geography, all right, okay? So, should we? Yeah, thank you.
Right, thanks, Li Hua. Right, good morning, parents. Just let me get this. Okay, right. The students address me as Miss Tan. Okay, I'm Shu Wei. Okay, right, just let me get this slide there. Okay, what Ms. Ong just shared with you, the skills minus alarms, the good habits in studying history also applies to studying geography and many other subjects. Okay. I see that we have a number of Set 1 students with us. Can you raise your hands so that I know how many of you are here? Don't be shy, I won't eat you up. Okay, thank you. Okay, right. So if you attend this session with your mommy and your daddy, I assume that you know, you'll be very independent student after this. Okay, right now, I think there is a question raised during the Set 1 PTM about why we are using Set 3 textbook and not the lower secondary textbook. Yep, okay. Answer is very simple. the Set 1 and 2 textbooks are simply too simple. Okay, and we have to cater to your high ability daughters. So we are using the Set 3 textbook. But however, we are not using every single content or concept in the Set 3 textbook because we also understand that at this age, certain concept may not be so appropriate yet. Okay, maybe a bit too complicated. All right, so along the way, we will tell your daughters, you know, which are the relevant ones and which are the ones that, yes, you want to improve your general knowledge, you can read up more about this, but it will not be tested, right? So it's only the Set 3 textbook. We are not using the Set 4 textbook at the lower secondary because the syllabus is slightly different. Okay, so I hope that will address your issue about why Nanyang Girls High School is using the secondary 3 geography textbook, all right? But you realize that we're not the only school doing it. So if your contact is very good, you will know which are the other schools that are also using Set 3 textbook for Set 1. Okay, right. And of course, the other thing is that we do not need to print so much notes for them. And when they're 13 years old, filing plenty of notes may be quite a challenge. Okay, even for the Set 4s. The other day, my Set 4 girl told me that in the process of shifting to a new place, she sold her entire set of Set 3 Integrated Humanities notes to Karanguni. I think she felt more pain than me. Okay, right, introduction. Actually, geography and history, I would say that the content still remains more or less the same as when you and me were secondary students, but the approach to learning, the approach to studying, the approach to teaching it has changed over the years. We are now addressing things like critical thinking skill. So memorizing is not going to get you your distinction, okay, right? And memorizing is actually can be very time-consuming and very demoralizing, right? The minute you finish your test, whatever you have memorized will have disappeared. So we will say that we want your daughters to understand the topic without, understand it and not memorizing it. And once you understand it, you actually can remember the facts. Okay, right, so anyway, this slide actually tells you that geography has not changed. It is still a study of space and time. We still need to know our environment at the global level, the regional level, and the local level. It is still about interaction between human and the physical environment. Very typical example, our next topic is actually weather and climate. And how is weather and climate influencing us? If you do realize it, parents, our weather for January and February has gone a bit not very right, correct? Okay, you don't see such heavy rain in February. Okay, so the 3 areas that I'm going to cover today is actually number 1, study skills. Number 2, answering skills and assessment. Number 3, making connections. You will notice that I like to do things in 3. It's not a coincidence that we all tend to remember things in 3s. We see things in 3s too. Look at your traffic light, it's red, amber, green, okay? Right? And, you just ask yourself, what are the things that we know that always occur in 3s, okay? Study skills, number 1. You love to ask your daughter this question. So do we. Did you study? You're not going to get a very good response. There will be 3 possibilities. Yes, no, a bit. So you do not know how effective has your study been. Do they know what they have studied? 4 questions, compliment of my colleague here. How did you study? How did you check your understanding? Where are your notes? What are the specific areas covered? These are just 4 examples. Rather than the 3-word question, did you study? They're going to tell you yes, no, maybe, right? Rather, did you really understand what you're studying, okay? Right, so study skills, I have divided study skills into 2 parts because we spent about 8 weeks covering map reading. We are very aware that from Set 1 to 4, there is something about map reading that they don't quite like, right? I mean, I love map reading, okay? So first part of study skills is on map reading. Study skills for part 2 will apply to all the other topics this year, okay? So you may want to check whether your daughter really understands, the concept of map reading by asking them to interpret the world and their surrounding. Okay, then I will go into the actual study skills for map. This is something that some of us did with our class. Draw your neighborhood. Okay, so one of my little Set 1 students did this. okay? So parent, if you are here, sorry, but I need to show this is very cute, okay? No, we give them a question, all right? And that is, you have to draw a map to show your friend how to get to your place from the nearest MRT, the nearest bus stop, or whatever. So this is what this child did. Obviously, you know that she did this from her mental image of the area she is staying in, okay? I'll show you the second one. Wow. This chart refers to something called the street directory. But a lot of effort. I'm sure she got to know her neighborhood a whole lot better, okay? Right? Another colleague of mine did this. Draw a map of Singapore. Put in the places, put in as many places as you know. Quite cute one, this one. Ang Mo Kio is right in the north. Woodlands has disappeared. Okay, but this is your mental image. Parents, do you know this or not? Or your mental image is just as good as this. Okay, but I thought this child is great. She roughly knows the position of our various HDB neighborhoods. Okay, they are about in the right position. Just that it's missing a couple of neighborhoods like Yishun and Woodlands, right? Okay, right, but roughly the direction is almost there. The east are correct, they're in the east. The west is meant to be in the west. She knows exactly where is Harbourfront. She knows exactly where is Marina Bay. Okay, and they did this without referring to any atlas or maps. It was on the spot. Come, girls, take a piece of paper out, draw the map of Singapore. Next, huh? Don't get a fright. Nothing wrong with this. This child said that, I am not very sure what is the shape of Singapore like. I draw a circle, but you see, parents, she knew roughly where the cluster of neighborhoods, in relation to each other. This one looks a bit like MRT line here. This one here. This is like the east-west line or something like that, right? I'm not very sure also. Okay, all right, obviously Orchard is very important to her. Okay, so you can do this kind of mental imaging with your daughters, okay, right? Okay, right, the fun is over. Do a quick sketch of the world. Now, you don't need to do this, right? This is where we're trying to see what is their prior knowledge of Singapore and their surrounding and their neighborhood. Okay, now, when it comes to a block test and exam, how to study map, and this is our recommendation. Do a quick sketch of the world. There are two different orientation. I'm not very sure whether you're aware of this or not. This is map 1, world map. I hope you can recognize this world map. Ignore the boxes, they are there for a different reason. This is map 2. It's still a world map. We did this in class, and many of them saw stars. They could not orientate already. This is what we call Eurocentric world map, most frequently used. All right, you see this in most diaries, in most books. This one here, the focus is on Asia and America. Pacific Ocean is right in the middle here, the Pacific Rim. Okay, this one is usually used in physical geography for plate tectonics because this is our very tectonically active area, earthquakes and volcanoes. All right, parents, you're very well traveled. You should be familiar with the Rockies, the Cascades, Yellowstone National Park here, Los Angeles, San Francisco. They're all around this region here, right? Okay, whereas this map, you'll be familiar with, okay, where am I? You're familiar with the New York area, okay, all right, the east coast of USA. Okay, so the two maps are different orientation. We like to show this to them because we wanted to understand that the world is round. It's a globe, it's a sphere. When you flatten something, you can look at it from two different perspectives, okay, right? So, it will help in their revision if they're able to draw a sketch of the world map. No need to do the exact boundary. You don't need to add in the Caribbean islands and so forth. Really, seriously, no need to, okay? Although I have one colleague here who can do that. Okay, Mr. Lim there, he can do that. All right, you don't need just a rough shape of the continents, and you know where your Pacific and Atlantic Ocean is. That is perfectly fine. That will help you to understand whether you know the world or not. Okay, right? And next, what are these special boxes? You know, you have to know the region and know your region. So, looking at the map as a whole, the world map as a whole, if I'm going to pull a section of the world map out, will you still be able to recognize this region? And that was what we gave during the recent quiz, okay? This is actually Europe, this is actually Southeast Asia, and this is Asia. Why the focus on these three regions? The focus on Asia is very simple. When your daughters reach set 3 and 4, you know, it is aligned to our global classroom program. They do have 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or 6 weeks, or up to 8 weeks of immersion program in China, in various provinces and cities in China, ranging from Guizhou to Shanghai. Okay? So we would like them to have a mental image of the future places that they may be going to. All right? And of course, Asia is very important. It's the next economic powerhouse, right? Okay? Europe, many of them are interested in Europe, okay, right? Also, Europe economically in trouble. And this is the box here, Southeast Asia. We are in Southeast Asia. You have to know Southeast Asia, okay? Change the orientation map a little bit. Yes, shifted position. Europe is here, whole of Asia, and Southeast Asia, okay, right? This is not a perfect boundary of the region, okay, all right, but this is the best that I can do for visual impact here, okay, right, okay, so that is how you can help. Now, parents, I want to test you now, Ken. Set 1 girls, shh, okay, right, can you help me to identify continent A? Right here. Sorry? America. North America, thank you. Yeah. Identify water body F. Sorry? Bay of Bengal, well done. There's a voice coming from a few directions, okay? We have people telling us this is Indian Ocean. Indian Ocean is bigger. This one is nearer the land, the Bay of Bengal. Okay. Identify latitude X. Wow, the same voice. Very good. Equator, Y. Tropic of Cancer, well done. Okay, same voice. Give the letter name of this ocean that lies between the American continents, Africa, Europe, and name this ocean. Huh? Sea, what is sea? Atlantic Ocean, okay, right here. Your Americas are here, North and South. Africa, Europe is here, and this is your Atlantic Ocean, okay? Give the letter name of the most populous country in the world, for now. China, where is China? B, okay, right here. Right, this is China. When I go to class, I realize that some of the students have a prior knowledge of how China looks like. They will tell me it looks like a chicken. Then we tell them, no, don't say chicken, doesn't sound very good. It looks like a rooster. Okay, right? By the way, parents, these questions that we showed you here will be typical example of quiz question and block test questions. So I'm just trying this out on you first. Okay? All right? So you see, it's not about memorizing, okay? It's really about understanding how the world map looks like, and from there you will, learn the location of the place. It makes more sense in this way than to try to memorize the countries and so forth, okay? Okay, next one. Which part of the world is this? Southeast Asia, okay, right? We are here, right? Okay, Peninsula, Malaysia. Okay, I think this one is Cambodia. Okay, right, and then you have Myanmar right there. Okay, you have to know this one if you have not answered any of the other questions. What is X? Nature reserve, almost there, not very. Central catchment area. Okay, this is Central catchment area. Nanyang Girls High School is somewhere around here. Not very sure where, but somewhere around, I think, this side here, okay? All right, people? Okay, right now. So that is all for map reading skills, okay? It's a 8-week, about 7 weeks long course format reading, and these are some ways that you can help your daughter revise, and this is how we also tell them to advise them to do their revision. Okay, now, study skills part 2. This will take you through right to the end of set 2, including set 3 and 4, if they still continue to read geography. Okay, now, 2 things occurs, okay, for study skills. Study skills can start right during lessons. Study skill can also start at home, in school, or what we call after lesson, post-lesson. During lesson, we expect them to take down, highlight keywords, phrases. Please do not color the entire paragraph. We were once upon a time students ourselves. We love our highlighters very, very much, right? But you're only supposed to highlight the keywords, or you take down the notes, the diagrams that is drawn by the teacher on the whiteboard, depending on the mode of teaching for that particular day, okay? Seek clarification. Ask questions. We will advise our girls to do that if you are not sure. So for example, we received a very interesting question. My colleague received a very interesting question recently. Let me go backtrack. This one. The child was referring to Europe and Asia. And she said, why is it that Europe and Asia are considered to be separate continents when there's no water body dividing Europe and Asia? You get it? All right? The child is very well read. Obviously, the child must have read something about the entire continent in another context known as Eurasia. That is physical geography, plate tectonics. This whole thing is Eurasia, okay? But this child is asking, but why, why when we study this is called Europe and this is called Asia? So we told the child that this is all part of geopolitics at play. Geopolitics is a big word, so we say that this is cultural and political aspect, okay? Europe must be deemed to be a standalone power, so the rest of this area here is Asia, right? Okay, of course, they can go and read further if it interests them. Okay, but this is what we meant by critical thinking skill. This child is thinking, okay? All right, now, after the lesson, revise, okay? Read through the notes and the readings and whatever else has been given to you. Put away the books, put away the notes, and then that is where you check your understanding. Are you able to come up with a flow chart or a mind map to consolidate your learning? Okay, so we are not asking for full details here. You just draw a flow chart or a mind map, okay, or whatever kind of diagram that you have in mind. And then you can check your understanding. Don't need to write down every single word, memorize every single word from the textbook or from the notes. It's just an overall framework of what you have covered for the day. The other way is to illustrate with diagrams to help recall the learning, okay? Right, again, I have samples to show you. Okay? A teacher did this before the lesson. What they know about weather and climate, okay? Right? Very nice responses, Weather and climate affects the economy of the country, okay? There are pros and cons of different weather and climate. Okay, so this is what the child knows and what the child wants to know to learn about weather and climate. Okay, right? So, next. Okay, this is what I meant by revision with illustration. So instead of writing out paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of how latitude affects temperature, use a diagram. It's just as effective. In fact, it may be more effective. Okay, so this girl here understood that it is cooler at the higher latitudes. It is warmer at the lower latitudes. Okay, right? Due to the distance from the sun and the spherical, the curved surface of the earth. All right, it's the curved surface, a bigger area, so the intensity of the radiation spread over a bigger area. Okay, so they distribute the heat, whereas at the equator, the heat is concentrated. This diagram explains that the child knows what is happening. Okay, right, next, distance from the sea is another example, right, okay. And this one here, this child knows it is cool here, it is not as hot here, it's hottest here. Not as hot here, cool here again. Okay, but there's a comment written by the teacher here. But why? There's no sun to show me anything. It has got something to do with, number one, the shape of the earth, number two, the distance from the sun. Then we give this back to the child. Okay, but that is one way revision can be done. It doesn't always have to be reading without action. It doesn't always have to be memorize and write down everything that you can remember from the textbook. No, it can be revised using illustrations. Okay, but of course it varies from topic to topic. It can be revised by using framework, flowchart, and mind maps. And I think that in primary school, most of them have been trained to do mind maps. Okay, right. The next part, study skills. After study skills is the assessment and answering skills. Okay, there are 3 steps to this. Step 1, scaffolding is done during the lessons. This is formative in nature. Step 2, more scaffolding in assignments. This is formative and also partially summative. Like what Miss Ong shared with you, I think the Set 1 students are still a bit unsure about the importance of the daily work, because they are very much used to what happened in primary school, that the only thing that will be counted towards their CA is that big test, is a big block of tests, all right? And that the daily work is just daily work, not to be counted in the assessment. But when you reach secondary school, some of the assignments are actually graded, and we will always inform them. Some of the quizzes are graded also, all right? And this will constitute the bigger component called your CA1, okay? Right, so we can tell them many, many times, but sometimes the transition difficulty is there to remember. Okay, so scaffolding is done in assignments, graded and ungraded. And step 3 would be the block test and the end of year exam. I decided not to write end of year exam here because it's still very far away. Okay, so that would be the summative assessment. Okay, all right, now, how do we teach answering skill? How can you help your daughters, okay, right? Answer questions. For geography, we always tell the students, you have to dissect the question into 3 areas. Okay, number 1, what is the command word? Sometimes, what are the command words? What is the subtopic, or what is the topic? Number 3, are there any other special instructions? Okay. Answering skill, this one is always very well received by the students. They will roar with laughter. They cannot help but laugh at the acronym here. You see, we're adults, we don't find this funny, but our little ones will find it very funny. P-E-E-P, okay, right. Now, this is also very similar to other subjects. I think in history they call it P-E-E-L, L for the link. I think in LA is P-E-E-R. R for reiterate, okay? So whatever it is, we always try to give them an acronym to remember how to answer a question. What goes into the answer, all right? P for point, E for explain or elaborate. The second E, evidence or example, depending on the question asked. Now, from this slide onwards, your daughter will have received an exact carbon copy. This is how we teach the skills. Some teachers may have touched a little bit on this week, but I think most did not have the chance to. I believe that some will be having 1 or 2 sessions during the March break, and then some of us will be starting in week 1. It depends on the nature of the timetable, because we are running on a two blocks and 1 block over a fortnight. Okay, so it depends on the configuration of each individual class timetable. Okay, right, so you have a head start for this. I'm giving you a heads up on this, so that during the holidays, your daughters can actually look at this. This is actually very self-directed here, okay? The instructions are very clear, they can just follow, all right? We've also given them a practice paper for their block test, okay? And it can go hand in hand with this set of slides on answering skills, okay? Right, so answering skills, PEE. How do we apply this? Okay, firstly, question number 1, describe the relationship between temperature and latitude. 2-mark question. Break down the question. What is the command or the instruction word? Describe is the command word. And that is where I will start telling the students at this point. People start to highlight the word describe, write the word command and instruction word there. Okay? Now, what is the topic? Latitude, temperature. Okay? The factor is on latitude. How latitude affects the temperature. Got it? Simple 2-mark question. Okay? So, step number 1, dissect the question. Know your command words. Because if you misread your command word, chances are that your answer will be out of point. Know the topic. Question asks for latitude. Please don't give altitude. It happens before. Now, the answer itself. Remember, PEE, okay? The point. Temperature decreases from the lower latitude to the higher latitude. That is a point made. Okay? This shows me that, this student understood. All right? But you need to elaborate. Why? It says describe. Okay? Right? Temperature is higher at the equator as it is at lower latitude, and temperature is lower at the poles as it is at a higher latitude. There is no perfect answer, okay, parents, right? But this is an answer that covers all the requirement of this question. Okay? Let me complicate this question. Question 2. Explain the differences in temperature between Singapore and Alaska. Oops. You better know where is Alaska. You better know where is Singapore situated. Okay, so break down the question again. The command and the instruction word or words explain the difference. That is the instruction. What is the topic? Same as the previous question. Latitude. The factor affecting temperature is latitude. One step further. What is your mental image of Singapore and Alaska on the world map? Is Alaska sitting on the equator or Alaska near the North Pole? Okay, that is where you find that you have to apply your map reading skill. Okay, so if the child forgot and think that Singapore is in the poles and Alaska is at the equator, she's in big trouble. Okay, right? Answer, can you see? Okay, point, PEE again. What's the point here? Temperature is lower in Alaska, right? Okay, I have to bring in Alaska already because the question is specifically asking about temperature differences between Singapore and Alaska, okay? Right, as it is located near the North Pole, and temperature is much higher in Singapore as it is near the equator. Temperature increases from lower latitude to the higher latitude. Okay? Explain. All right? This is because the sun's rays strike the Earth's surface perpendicularly at the equator. Okay? This means solar radiation is concentrated over a smaller area. Remember, I showed you the students' understanding of the world just now, right? How they illustrate what they understand about how latitude affects temperature is applied here in words now. Okay? Henceforth, the heat is more intense and higher temperature in Singapore. Vice versa for the polar area. Okay? Right? So you see, the question is similar. Both are all about factors, how latitude affects temperature, but we phrase it differently. One is simply describing a relationship. This one requires them to explain the relationship. Okay, parents? Complicate the question one step further. Explain how latitude affects temperature differences. Full stop. Give examples. Uh-oh. All right, now, this is a bit more complicated than the previous one. Command, instruction word, explain how. Topic, Latitude again, same. These two things didn't change. Now they have to recall what they have learned from their map reading skill. They have to give examples, okay? So point made. Temperature increases from the lower latitude to the higher latitudes, okay? Explain and elaborate, the same, okay, right? The sun rays strike the Earth's surface perpendicularly, okay, and at the pole, vice versa. Something is missing. The example is missing, right? So the student now, they were not given an example, okay? In question 2, they were given examples. They were helped with examples, Singapore and Alaska. In question 3, they have to come up with their own example. So either they can use Alaska or Singapore, or they can simply use equator and the North Poles. All right, in this particular example that I've given you, I use Singapore and Alaska as examples. Singapore is located near the equator. They can use Peninsular Malaysia, they can use Indonesia, it doesn't matter, but Singapore is familiar. Okay. Alaska, they can use the North Pole, they can use the polar region, they can use Siberia and so forth, okay? It doesn't matter. Something that they're familiar with, right? Okay, so Alaska, which is in the higher latitudes. So these 2 bulleted points would be the example given, right? That they have to give an example for this particular question, okay? Now, what about other types of question? More straightforward, definition question. What is temperature? 1-mark question. Question asks for definition, okay? Or this is what everybody loves. State 4 factors that can affect temperature. Need only 4 words, okay? 5 words sometimes, okay, right? Okay, so these are the more simple question, okay? These questions are more of the recall type of question, okay? All right, now, just to let you know first, at set 1 and 2 geography, we are still doing point marking, okay? All right, history does a lumps, we are not doing lumps, we are still doing point marking. Okay, questions for you to try. Explain how cloud cover affects the temperature of a place. Give example. No, I'm not testing you to give me the answer, but perhaps you want, I can walk you through this. What is the command word? Explain how. What is the factor? What is the factor here? Cloud cover, okay? And this question requires you to use example, okay? They will know, the example we are referring here would be maybe like the desert and, you know, maybe like Singapore has more cloud cover and so forth, okay? Question 2. Explain why places like Genting Highlands, Cameron Highlands in Malaysia have lower temperature than their surrounding. Okay, you see, they need to have some awareness of our neighbors, okay? Command word, explain. But what is this factor? Genting Highlands, Cameron Highlands. Is it latitude? It's altitude, okay, right? So there's a bit of application here. They must understand their surroundings well enough to say, hey, you know, Genting Highlands, Cameron Highlands has to do with altitude already. All right, even if they do not know where is Genting, where is Cameron, the word gives it away. It says highland here, right? Okay. Question 3, question 4, simple. Definition question. What is humidity? What is precipitation? All right, okay. Last question is explain how convectional rain is formed. Okay, so this one is specific to rainfall. So these are examples of the kind of revision questions that we will give our students to try out on their own. Okay, and this is something that you can get your daughter to do during the holidays as well. Okay. By the way, convectional rain is very important to us. We have been experiencing convectional rainfall for the past couple of days. All right. Okay. This is a list of command and instruction words. I put part 1 here because the list is very, very long. We do not want to frighten you. We do not want to frighten our set 1 girls. So for this particular block test, the command words they have to learn. State or identify is the same. Define, describe, explain, give reasons. Okay? There'll be more coming as we move on to term 2, term 3. And when they go on to set 2 and set 3 and set 4. So that is the reason why I have a part 1 here. For this particular block test, we learn things in little baby steps, okay? Right? Just to keep all of you informed, okay? If you have not received your you have not read your emails, please don't delete your emails from school, okay? Block test, 1st April, Monday. What time? How long? Section A, 10 marks map reading. Continents, ocean, major latitudes, longitudes, and a specific region, Asia, including Southeast Asia. That is a scope for the map reading test. Okay. Section B, structured question, weather and climate, 15 marks. Textbook, page 86 to 98, and whatever notes they have taken down during lesson time. Okay. Definition, type of question. What the 4 factors that affect temperature, humidity and precipitation, okay, right? Answering skills tested, the 4 skills that I've gone through with you earlier on, okay? Right, so that would be the assessment and the answering skills, okay? What to expect for this block test as well, and how to do revision, how to study. My final point, geography is beyond the textbook. Geography goes beyond the classroom. Please help your daughters make connections with what is happening in the world, the region, and within Singapore. It may not have to do with weather and climate, our current topic, but talk to them about current affairs, because some of these issues can actually affect us. This was from yesterday's papers. I didn't have time to read today's papers yet. But on page A11, another volcano is spewing out ash in Indonesia. You know how it can affect our travels, okay? Right? Ash, volcanic ash is a threat to aviation, okay? And of course, the recent scandal about having horse meat in meatballs from IKEA, right? Okay, now these are things that you can share with them. In the same papers, in this same news, I think on the previous page, it says that IKEA's meatballs back on sale today. All right, okay, so tell them, talk to them. Okay, why are meatballs safe in Singapore and why is it an issue in Europe? Because we get ours from Australia. Okay, right? So where is Australia? And so forth. So have a conversation with them about what is happening in the world. All right, what are the current issues happening? What are the political issues that are very near home, like the recent and still ongoing Lahad Datu? Okay, I think some of you here are Malaysians, right? Maybe you even come from Sabah, my favorite place too, okay? Right, so talk to them about what is happening in the world. It helps them to form a mental image of the world, and they can better relate, okay, to what is being taught in class at times, not just in geography, but in history, in LA, and so forth as well. And the sources, newspaper, the Straits Times, journals, go and subscribe to National Geographic or Reader's Digest, okay, right? Okay, so I've come to the end of it. I hope you found this session useful. We have a very short Q&A. Yeah, we have our VP here, Dr. Tay, our Head of Humanities, Ms. Chua, and my fellow geography colleague, Ms. Xia Bileng. Mr. Lim Chao Hun is here. Ms. Ong Li Hua is here. Okay, right? Yeah. So any questions? Or we have done the session so well that you have no questions? Or we have done the session so badly that you do not know what is happening? It's a very cute world map. I found this on the web. They use animals to represent various parts of the world. Okay, you have individual questions specific about your daughter, you can come and see us. But in the meantime, please fill in the feedback form. Yeah, it's a single sheet, it's a standalone sheet of feedback. Okay, we would love to collect the feedback from you so that we know how to improve our session for next year. Parents, be kind, okay? Thank you. Please be very kind in your comments. Thank you, thank you. And remember, don't delete emails from school, okay? Very important.